What's the process?
Illustrations by me.
So lately I've gotten a lot of comments about what's my process, how do I do things, how do I go about creating something, and I wanted to take a couple of videos and show you that information. So this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through layering and how I add layers, and I'm going to go a little bit further than I normally go, because I also wanted to do something else and test out that mead and hot press paper with the pencils, the water soluble pencils. So I'm going to use some Derwent ink tints at the very end and put it on top of the watercolor and just see if I can add a couple more layers. But I'm going to build up layers slowly, and then I'm going to put some ink in at the end. Let's see how that turns out. And once I start with this, I'm going to do something quick I've got to share with you. You know, we always yell at companies for doing shady things and weird stuff, and we never praise the ones that actually are working towards bettering themselves and actually trying to be better. So I'm going to also read an email to you from a company that I have, and it's something in response to something that I said about them. All right, let's get into it. So a couple of points that I just want to make off the top is I wanted to do not as many colors, so I start putting some colors on the palette to see which ones am I going to use, how am I going to use them. I didn't want to use a ton of them, so I only used a few, and then I added a little bit of extra color, and then I went into the pencils. I knew I was going to add the pencils, so I didn't want to go crazy with the color. Now this one turned out very dark, and I was in a very dark place. Some things had happened, and I was not in the happiest of moods when I created this. It's okay. It's not a big deal. The moment has passed, and it's still not a good situation, but the moment has passed, and I'm not there anymore. But you could tell, it's the first time that I've ever noticed that a mood has affected my artwork, because it came out much darker than I would have probably ever done it. And I did make a couple of missteps with some colors. I don't care about that. I'm fine with that. The colors were not important to me. What was important to me was developing the layers. So that's what I did. That's what I wanted to do. And I did it a certain way. Now, I did say before I get started and get really into this that I wanted to mention to you, so you know I did the Paul Rubens review. And they saw it, and they sent me an email, and I would like to read you the email that they sent me. That way you can see. I just want to point something out here. So anyway, in the beginning, they try and butter me up. They tell me, I'm glad to see you've uploaded the video. It was very quick. It contains a lot of professional information and unique insights into watercolor. So anyway, I don't get a big head when people say that. I really do not get a big. I understand that I am where I am in my art journey, and there's people who know a lot more than I do. And at the same time, I know some things that some other people who are not as far along in their journey don't know. So it's just a matter of where you are. It's not a big thing. Anyway, let's see. So they said, so not only did they watch the video, they also read all the comments. So they said, I noticed your audience mentioned the issue of Paul Rubens not having open stock colors. Yes, we receive a lot of feedback regarding this. Please rest assured that we are currently collecting opinions from consumer market and planning to introduce open stock for some rare and discontinued colors. We expect to achieve this goal no later than next year, possibly as early as the second half of this year. So they also said, we are also aware that Paul Rubens still has a long way to go in providing high-quality art supplies, and our suppliers do not have the advantages of well-known watercolor brands like Winsor and Newton. However, please be assured that despite not being perfect, we are continuously striving to do better. Now, how about that? So they said, therefore, we greatly welcome suggestions and feedback from professional watercolor artists and consumers. Your input is the driving force behind our continuous improvement in product quality and service. So I want you to know, when you see any YouTuber anywhere and they use a product, make sure you comment. If you have something to say, make sure you say it, because you never know who's going to be reading those comments, including the manufacturer of the product. That's very important. Now, I will give them credit. I want to make sure that I mention this because I think it's important. They could have turned around and said, I can't believe you said those things about our paint. We're never going to do any work with you ever again. We're not going to deal with you anymore. We're done with you. Go somewhere else. This is a bad idea for us. They could have said that. They didn't. They said, yes, we realize we have a long way to go and we're trying to improve ourselves. Thank you for your feedback. And I said some things that were some pretty negative things about their products. And I said a couple positive things. I did. But I did mention some negative things. So they read it, they saw the video, they understood it, they took in the information, and they're going to try and make better products. That's what you need from companies. And because of that, I will recommend their products, because if a company is willing to go out on a limb and say, yeah, we know we're not perfect and we're trying to get better, we just need some people to give us some more information, by all means, I would love to be those people who give you some more information. And I would love this audience to be the people who say, hey, this is my experience with what you're supplying and what you have. Can you please change this? Or do you think maybe you can do that? And watch them react to that. That's wonderful. That's a great thing. And one of the things you can tell that they react to those things is because this is a Series 5 watercolor, which means they've had 4 other series prior. And they understand they have to get better, so they keep trying to get better. I just wanted to mention that. I just wanted to say, hey, these people are actually doing something, and they're doing something well. They're trying to get better, and that's an important thing. No matter, that's what we're all doing as artists. Look, this piece that I did here, I don't think it was very wonderful. I'm trying to get better. I'm always trying to get better than I am right now. I don't expect you to say, oh, this is a bad piece, that's it, I'm abandoning you, I'm never going to talk to you ever again, I don't want to see any of your videos, you're done. No, I expect you, or at least the audience that I would like for this channel, I would expect them to say, hey, I understand that this was not the best piece that you did, but hey, we're with you for a while, we see that you're getting better, or at least you're trying to get better, and we're going to support you. And those are usually the people that are here. The majority of this audience is a wonderful audience, and that's how you treat me, which I am very grateful for. Believe me, I appreciate that. But we have to do that with companies too. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt and say, look, they're saying they're going to try and improve themselves. They're not trying to defend themselves. Hey, you have no idea what you're talking about. They're not doing that. They're actually trying to improve themselves. I think it's notable. Any company that does that is notable. All right, so get back to this. So I went ahead, I can't even tell you, the inspiration for the actual piece was, it was like this meadow that kind of backed up into a wooded area, and the trees were coming down, like coming forward and creating a little shadow, and that is not at all what I painted. I ended up starting to do something, and then I said, oh, you know what, I want to change this a little bit, I'm going to go a different direction with it, and I went a completely different direction, and so even though the shapes are maybe there of the things that I was looking at, definitely the style and what the end result is definitely not the thing that I was looking at. But I don't even have the picture anymore. I found it online. I just started doing something. I knew it was going to be abstract. I have not found it again, or else I would show you. I'd put it up next to this picture, and I'd show you and say, oh, look, there it is. There's the picture I was trying to do. Or at least based on this abstract was based on this shape or whatever, but I cannot find it. However, I think that the way that this came out was pretty good. I did enjoy the process, and I tried to put many layers on so you can see how I develop color and how I develop shapes and forms and different things. It's an important thing. I don't know, some of you have asked me, how do you come up with this thing? Now, I'm also going to show you how I come up with the actual compositions and things like that. So that'll be the next video most likely. I'll show you a little bit of the composition and see how that goes. So, but really my biggest aim with this was I want to build layers. I want to show you how to create the texture with layers. And I hope I did that. If there's some reason that you say, oh no, that's not really good, I didn't enjoy that, and that was not a good thing, and that's not how I use layers, and that's not what I do. And that could be. Not everybody does things the normal, like the same way. So I don't think that the way that I do things is a normal way. That's just the way that I do it. That's the way that my brain works. That's the way that I compose the entire piece. And that's how I put it together. You may do something completely different. You may not like how I did this, and you may do it a completely different way. But if you've never done it this way, or if you're curious on how to do something like this and how to build up the color, then do this. You see, I put down a very light wash at first. And then I put down maybe a little bit extra color, and then maybe a little bit of extra color. Might have changed the color and go on top of the old color with a different color. So I do that just to kind of play with it a little bit and see where I want to develop the areas. And then I slowly build them up. And then in the end here, I'm going to add some Derwent Inktense. I'm really going to build up the areas and try and get them kind of going in a different direction. So I guess in that little yellow, like orange area in the very front where it meets the blue, I kind of made a misstep there with the color, and I tried to make it, I wanted it to be a little bit more golden, and I ended up making it look a little bit darker than I wanted it to, but that's fine with me. I don't mind that at all. What happened was fine, and then I added some more layers to kind of blend it together to make it a little bit more smooth, I guess, in the color transition. So that's fine. There's no problem there. But let me know, do you do something completely different when you build up your areas? Do you, some people do like a heavy wash and then they build up the darkest colors first, and then they go back and they lift out some things and they do that kind of stuff. Some people do that. It's harder with watercolor, but some people still do it. Especially with the Inktense. If you take that Inktense block, I can add white on top of that and it would lighten up a lot. Or you can use some gouache and put some gouache on top and it would lighten the area a lot. I didn't do that, but some people do. Some people put in some dark areas and then add some gouache to lighten up the areas. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Let me know how you work. Do you put in your lightest areas and just continuously make them darker and darker? Or do you like to go back and forth, maybe add a little gouache and lighten something up and then darken it again? And whatever you like to do, let me know how you work. Most watercolorists go from light to dark. That's just how watercolor is. That's how the medium works. But don't worry about that. You do things however you find that they work for you. I don't care what everybody else does. I don't care what you're supposed to do. You do what you're going to do based on how you work. And that's what makes your work unique. And when someone watches you create something, they say, oh, I don't usually do things like that. That's interesting. And you create some kind of spontaneity in them, some kind of creativity kind of bubbles up from them, that they get an idea and they're like, oh, wait, I can do that? So let me try that now. And then they do something that you just did, even though that's how you've always done it. It's nothing special to you, but they've not done it that way, so it's special to them. And I think I've talked about this several times before. If you do something one way and then you find another way that it's done, to you, that could be the greatest thing in the world. That could be the biggest epiphany that changes how you do everything with your art. And meanwhile, someone else has started that way. So then when they look at the old way you used to do something, they're like, oh, wow, that's a new way. I've never done that before. And it changes everything about how they do something. Even though you're saying, no, the way that you did it changed my view of how I do it. It changed everything for me. And they're saying the same thing to you. So it just depends on, everybody starts somewhere. And then you get kind of used to what you're doing. And then when you see someone do something new, it just pops something in your head. You're like, oh, wait, that's great. I've never seen that before. I'm going to start doing that now. And it's almost like, oh, that's what I've always should have been doing and I just never was. Meanwhile, it's not, because if you were doing it, you would have then seen something different and said the same thing about that. It's kind of how we work as people. We get used to doing something. So first we figure out how to do something. We do it that way for a long time, and that's the normal way for us. Then we see someone do something new, and it blows our mind. It's amazing. How could we have missed that? That's really the way it should be done. Anyway, however you do things is perfect for how you do it. And then, or at least it's good for how you do it. It's what you're used to. It's how you learn to do it. Then you look at other people and how they do it and see if you can add little elements of how they're doing things to what you're doing. That's all. It's not this big thing. You don't have to change everything. You don't have to get rid of everything you've always done. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say that. And I just look at them like, why? What you're doing is great. Why would you just throw it all away just because this one person said this? Okay, let me give you a good example. I think this is the best example that I've ever seen because I've seen so many people talk about it. So let's say you're an artist who grabs a pencil before you draw anything and you sketch it out with pencil and you erase lines and you put in, try and reshape it so the form is correct, and then you might erase some more lines and do it again. And then when you have it exactly how you want it, you go in with pen and you draw over the pencil with the pen the exact lines you want, and then you erase the pencil, and now you have a pen drawing exactly how you want it, but you did it with the pencil first. Now, there are some people who say, oh yeah, you should try putting pen to paper without using a pencil. Just pick up the pen and start putting it down on the paper, and just wherever the lines fall, that's where they fall. And you start sketching like that with a pen. And it starts to blow your mind, and you say, wow, I can't believe I've never done this before. This has changed everything about how I do art. I'm more confident with my lines now because I know they have to be permanent. So now I just make the stroke, and it's a perfect stroke just where I wanted it. And all these things, and these people's minds are blown. Well, let me tell you something. There are some people who started drawing with pen. They never drew the pencil underline and then started doing the pen over the top. They never did that. They started drawing with pen. And they will draw with pen and they get done what they want to get done. And then someone one day says, hey, if you start doing that with pencil first, you can change some lines if maybe that's not exactly where you want it. And you change that pen line a little bit, or the pencil line rather, figure out where you want it, and then put the pen down over it, and it'll be perfect every time. And that blows their mind, and they're like, oh, why didn't I ever do this before? Why'd people tell me to just put the pen to the page and just start that way? So it can go both ways, and that's how art is. You start to discover different ways of doing things, and it starts to give you inspiration, and you then think that that's the greatest thing in the world. But and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Once you feel that way, run with it. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just keep in mind that not everybody has to do it that way. That's just new to you. It may not be new to someone else. It may not change anybody else's world, but it changed yours. And that's fine. Just do as much as you can with it while it's inspiring you. Make sure you get your pens and your paints and your pencils down on paper and just work with it as much as you can while you can. But I'm just saying there's always different ways of doing things, and you have to be aware of that. You have to understand that people do different things different ways, and there's no one way to do anything, especially with art. I can't tell you how many times I hear people say things like, oh, this is a rule, or that's a rule, you're supposed to do it like this, you're supposed to do it like that. Don't pay attention to people who talk like that. There's no rules with art. You do things the way that you need to do it, how you need to do it. And that's just how it is. And if any of this information is useful, you can thank these people popping up on the screen here. They're the ones who paid me to say this. It was their idea. So you let them know, say, hey, thank you for sponsoring this video so I can see this information and maybe have it change my life for the best. I don't think I've ever done that to anyone, but it could be the first time somewhere. You have no idea. You don't know. Alright, so thumb up the video if you're going to maybe try layering if you don't normally layer. Not all the time do I layer. Sometimes I just put, you see all the time, I put the full strength paints down on the page, one swipe, I'm done, and then I put some ink in and I put some details in, but when I do layers, this is how I do it. I like to build it up slowly. I like to do light washes and do another wash and another wash, another wash. And sometimes I add mixed media and I put pencils on top, and sometimes I put colored pencils on top, or sometimes I do the water soluble, or sometimes I just do ink and I do a shade of gray ink and then darker and darker until I get to black ink. So you just do things the way that they need to be done, however you want to do them, whatever gives you the best result for what you're trying to accomplish, and just don't listen to everybody else. You just kick them right out of your mind. All right, if you would like to join our community, go to illustrationsbypete.com. You can come in, you can put your own artwork on the site and promote it. You can find some inspiration in the free reference photos. You can just use them however you want in your artwork. You do not need to credit me. Or you can come into the forums and talk to some people and maybe give some advice and maybe find a little bit of information that helps you. So come check us out. All right, that's about it for me. I'm going to go. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.